Hook, what is the crack? How are we getting on? Thank you very much for coming on. What is the story? How was the film today with wee Tedster? I have just realised I'm going to have to disable that check-in command because I tried to get rid of OneDrive earlier on. Well, it was actually yesterday trying to get rid of OneDrive, and because it was just being an absolute horcrux. So it wouldn't even let me open some applications because it saw your OneDrive is full, but it was that corrupted, it wouldn't let me actually unsync things. So I had to go into the registry and actually physically remove OneDrive from everything. So that was a bit of a nightmare, and I'm just realizing that a lot of the file paths
At Backlash? Backlash. At Backlash.
Backlash. Dominic, what's happening?
Backlash.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So a lot of the file paths that I was using no longer work. So it's not going to write anything back where it should. So I'm going to have to see what's sorting that.
At Backlash. Backlash.
I just maybe shorten that one. That one goes on way too long, doesn't it? But Tomahawk, what is the crack with you? How are you getting on today?
Sorry, we're going streaking through the
100 stream streak, Jesus Hook.
Come on, everybody!
See, that's not fair. Mine keeps resetting than yours, and it's done it twice now, and it's fucking annoying me. I should have well over 100. I think we should write to Twitch and complain. Of course, did gardening, did a run, beer tonight. Oh, is this for the training for the marathon as well? Triple digits, I know. Training for the marathon, are you now, Tomahawk? For anyone that doesn't know, Tomahawk got into the London Marathon as well. So there was like 78 billion people applied for it, and he was the one person that got on. Hogs, welcome on. Thank you very much for the raid, straight off the bat. How was the stream? I was calling in later on as well. What is the story? Training starts today, sort of. Yeah, with a beer. With a beer it starts. Thank you very much as well for the follow. Niljourn, appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Irish, what is the story? How are we getting on? For anybody that doesn't know, whenever you raid into me, go in my Hall of Fame. I don't normally go on this early, but that's what she said. But give me a wee second, I'll hop over. I managed to get this fixed. This is how I know a lot of the stuff wasn't working. The pogs should be on here. They are over there in the yellow. A lot of the stuff since I took off OneDrive stopped working, and that's why I had to take off the check-in service. But they are pogs. Thank you so much for choosing me for your raid. Irish guy, what's up? She's still playing away at Star Citizen. First run on Resi 4. Yeah, I called in earlier and you were... What part were you at? I think it was the bit you were in the house with Luis. I was just being a lurky turkey, but I love Resi 4 Remake. It's a very good game. Very good game. How are you finding it so far? Are you enjoying it? No, I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. I didn't miss anything. 9 months ago, baby steps. 9 months ago. That is a baby Tomahawk as well. I'm enjoying it. I loved Resi 4. I thought it was very, very good. Resi 2 Remake's still my favourite, but Resi 4 is definitely up there. Actually, I think I might have a tier list so far of the ones I played. Ah, there we go. Blocks my face, but up in the S tier, I have Resi 4 and Resi 2. Then Resi 1, Resi 3, and Resi 5. That's my opinion of it so far. Then a Crazy 6 Stacy gifted me Resi 2 and 3 on stream. Oh, amazing! Amazing! See when they all go on offer as well? That's what I did. I got the whole bundle for like 30 quid of everything. The only one I didn't have was Resi 9, and it was just before that game came out. It kind of went on offer. But happy days. A lot of people give Resi 3 grief because it's a lot less explorative. It's very linear compared to the other ones. But I loved Resi 3. I thought it was good. It was a fun story. It wasn't as good as 2 or 4, but it was fun. It was good. I enjoyed it. And I think you will too. 12 months from the Flim Flam, man. You like the new wee alert widget as well? I sat and made that today. I need to play Resi 2. Just got into Final Fantasy 14, and I'm kind of mad about it so far. Spent all day yesterday. Oh, 14 was a massive obsession of mine. Fucking loved Final Fantasy 14. I still need to finish the latest expansion before the new one comes out. It kind of took a bit of a dip, in my opinion, in the last expansion, and I had lost interest in it. I'm enjoying this one. Yeah, definitely. Resi 3 good. OG's better than Remake, but Remake is still solid. I think so. And if you're picking up a remake, if you're picking up Resi 3 Remake for a couple of pounds, Jesus, you can't complain at that. People nearly remember that Resi 3 is an extension by all accounts. It is, because of Loop Theory. Tomahawk, by Loop Theory, it's an extension. Exactly. You're right. It's got you. Yeah. Oh, Final Fantasy 14 is a phenomenal game. Such a chill game. It is. You can just switch off and listen to music or lurk in someone's stream and just play it, and it's class. My chat window is not sitting right. What are you doing, you son of a bitch? Sit you there. You there. Behave. This is often forgot about. It was meant to be part of Resident Evil 2, and then they pushed it to the full game. That's right. And a lot of games have done that. There's been a few of them which were supposed to be DLC and stuff, and they've made a full game out of it. And I'm trying to think of another good example now, but fuck's sake, I can't even. There was some big game as well where the DLC became a fully fledged game and actually did really, really well as well. And I'm okay with that. It's that good. It is, and especially if you're doing the free trial, it's like up to level 80 or something for free. And Jesus, you can't complain at that. You don't have to spend a penny until you're properly invested in it. Right, I'm going to get a drink and ready to watch these fuckers. These fuckers England get beat. Right, okay. I was just making sure I was reading that right one because that's a contentious subject. But no baller Pogs. Thank you very much for the raid. You go and enjoy your night. Spider-Man Miles Morales. That was it. Happy Irish. Hey, are you a legend? Coming on, just making sure I'm right in what I'm saying. Me and Happy Irish were in Asher stream earlier for Monster Hunter. It was a good time. But yeah, going to start Resident Evil 7 tonight. I'm a bit dubious about this one because it seems a bit freaky. So I'm a bit worried. But from what I hear, it's great. So I'm going to enjoy it. It was a great time. It was. Asher's phenomenal at it. Give me a second. I'm going to jump over to my game screen because this creepy music's playing on the back of my ear. So we're going to start a new game, and normal. We'll go normal. Stuck on. The exception of one section, the game's almost flawless. Fucking stop with the spoilers. Jesus, I've just pressed the new game button. Fucking hell.
And I love you. Oh, good news. I'm going to be coming home soon.
No! Jesus, Flamos, jeez, you're a wild man. Hey, wild man.
I cannot wait to be done with this babysitting job and come home to my loving
Mildred,
husband.
is there a way to get subtitles on Twitch? The accent is killing me. I think there is a way. It's actually on the actual browser as well. Me! Thank you very much for choosing me for your raid. Welcome on. Mega Moses. I can pause it. Yes, there we go. Mate, thank you very much. How was the rest of your stream? I was lurking there as well. You were playing a little bit of Dead by Daylight and a bit of Fortnite. And before that, there was that At Tony's game, which was fucking freaky as shit. Cody, welcome on. What is E? What's the story? He argued with earlier the Leyoric about auto reload and Resi. All right. Anybody from my side as well that hasn't checked out May, please check her out as well. Fucking brilliant streamer. A lot of fun, really high energy. I was all over the place. Thank you for the shout out. Not a problem. Glad to be here. Excellent. Now anybody rated to me as well goes to my Hall of Fame. Give me a second. I'm gonna jump right over. We've only just started, and that's our second raid. There's May. May has raided me 3 times this month as well. She's a 3-time champion. 3-time champion. So Pogs and May, thank you so much for raiding me tonight. I really appreciate you. It's a manual reload. You're a fucking manual reload with your spoilers. Subtitles don't work. I don't know what the setting is for that. I apologize profusely for my accent. It's if you came up from Pogs as well, the accent can be fierce. I don't know if there's anything on my side I can change. Maybe the help with the subtitles. Let's see if I pop it up on mine. Yeah, it's giving me the option for closed captions. Now it's not necessarily going to be correct because the Northern Irish accent is a fierce one. Is that fierce one? Híjole, that accent. There we go. Just don't know what you're doing. Admit it. I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't a clue. I'm just winging it. Ignore. He's always like this. Oh my god. Jason Racer, thank you so much for the follow. So I have it set up now that the alert it's going to be a different generation of PlayStation depending on what the alert is as well. Do I get left turn subtitles on? It's cooked. I would imagine so. The Northern Irish accent is fierce. I did have it at one point that it would auto translate my accent, and it was awful. It just picked up gobbledygook. No, I'm talking on the line. Right. Okay. I get you. Right. So, Pogs, May, thank you very much for the raids. I appreciate you coming on. We've just started the game as well. Hola, buenos dias. ¿Cómo estás? Thank you very much. That wouldn't have went well. You should really slow down like me. I know, Pogs, you definitely are the most understandable of all Northern Irishmen. I must learn your ways. You need to bring out a book so it can teach me. It can teach me what I'm doing. are a man who articulates well, and you have the soft melodic voice of an angel. Oh, May! Thank you so much for the butts! Oh, it's PlayStation 3. It's the first time that one's come through. 25 months. Thank you so much, May. You're so generous, thank you. Is this sarcasm I hear? No, it's my bad accent. I can't articulate well because my accent is so shite. And I apologize for that. And to be fair, all I can say is it's Hook's fault. And all Hook will say is, like he said last time, it won't happen again. But, back to Resident Evil. Pogs, you sound beautiful. You do. I often take recordings of Pogs, and I play it at night to fall asleep, just because, oh, thank you very much. Hook has given me 4 fingers, and 4 means he loved me 4 times. And I listen to Pogs, because it just sends me to sleep. May! May, what are you doing? Stop wasting money. Stop it. My god, all the cool people as well. Solo RPG, Loaded Wing, Nifty got a sub as well. I appreciate it. Stop. You gotta stop. My friend is from Ireland. Him I can understand. But when his dad spoke, I was lost. Oh, there is a... I'm going to do this first. I'm going to do this first because it's wonderful. It's wonderful. There is a video about a Kerry farmer, and I don't know if any of you have seen it. I might have to capture the screen as well. Not necessarily a window capture. Yeah, window capture. So there's a farmer from Kerry, and here we go. That should come on. Wait for the beat. There's a farmer from Kerry, and he's speaking English. Like this man is speaking English. Is picking up the audio as well. Capture audio as well. Let me know if you can hear it. Okay. This man is speaking English. Just so you know. Why is that not showing up on my screen now? Where did you go? Where did you go? Capture method. Why is it not appearing? God damn it! You son of a bitch! Alright, there we go. Right, so this man is speaking English. This man is speaking English, just so you know, it's English.
Last Saturday, Mikey Joe O'Shea brought his flock of Scotch sheep down from the mountain commonage ahead of lambing.
Irish, what are you doing? The thing is hidden. It has been hidden. Thank you so much for... Why are you... People, you don't need the sub. You don't need the sub. You really don't. Just comment on the chat. That's all I'm looking for. I don't understand 10% of what they're saying half the time. And that's the Irish way. We throw in all them we compliments so you can't hear us. I appreciate you gifting subs. Oh, Ready Crash as well. Was Ready not subbed to me? And Pog's got one as well. What are the chances? Ready Crash, you son of a bitch. Wait, Pogs wasn't subbed. Trader, no one needs the sub. See, people just coming on saying hello. That's all I'm asking for. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. You are so generous. But there's no need for paying money at all. Just come on and chat and annoy me. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. You are very, very generous. I appreciate you. So this is the man. He's speaking English. Speaking English. English.
Yeah. He discovered over 50 were missing. Allowing for a number of deaths and strays, Mikey is convinced over 45 sheep have been stolen.
Possibly at night, there'd be a full moon there about night, and it should be bright out, and there could anyone go up in the mountains about night, sure. Well, there was 45 sheep missing, like, and the lambs and everything, the sheep, just count out a nice bit of money, like. To be done about it, nothing.
So what he said was, they went out in the full moon, and there was about 45 sheep missing. It was a good bit of money, and what can be done? Nothing. All I heard was sheep. So that is the thickest part of the Northern Irish accent. It is wonderful. Or not Northern Irish, that's Kerry, that's Southern Ireland. Is that really English? 100% that is English. That is how some people in the country speak. Say what now? Exactly. Exactly. Nay.
Bitch. Oh, excuse
You
me?
gave her a treat earlier today.
No. What do you say?
That's a Jetta Farber from Kerry. It is 100%.
No.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to give you a treat if you call me that.
Mate, you're
What do
spoiling
you
us
say?
all. She deserves another one. She will, as I keep saying to Sierra, she will get fat. She's looking at me. She's watching me. Right. Dog cam. Right. You want me to treat, darling? Yeah. Oh, she doesn't want to sit near the camera. You traitor. No. Can I turn it? Can I turn it? Yep.
Sorry, we're going streaking through the quad
Oh,
and into the gymnasium. Come on, everybody!
Oh, what have you done? Camera's fucked. Ah, shit. You know what? Forget about it. We still haven't got a dog. Just pause. Technical difficulties, and the difficulty was me all along. There we go. Dog has been fed. 7 stream streak as well, mate. Thank you so much. Jeepers. Yeah, that was definitely, and that was definitely speaking English, but some of them farmers down south have seriously thick accents. Dogs are the best. They are the best. But of all the people, the dogs are the best people. Sierra, welcome in. What is happening? What is the story? And once I found Sierra as well, please do so. Friend of the stream. Last playing Outriders with her husband, Flimosh. Who fucking loves Loop Theory. Oh no, I'm on my screen. It's alright. Right, so we're starting to play Resident Evil 7. Let's get into it.
Bye, baby.
Don't know who this lady is. But I'm very upset at it. And... oh no! Right, I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl.
Ethan.
Oh, I'm her. Right, okay. Check-ins and walk-ons
You were
turned
right.
off.
I did lie to you. I shouldn't have.
The check-ins are turned off. The walk-ons should not be. And it is probably because I deleted OneDrive and it has fucked about with all my folders and file destinations now. So I bet you if I go into the walk-on folder and walk-on sounds, yes, it has OneDrive still in it, and that's fucking why. Hate you, OneDrive. I hate you so much. And I'll flick back to everybody's first words and reset that. That should do it. It has done nothing but cause me hassle because I was trying to open a few applications. It was all, oh, your OneDrive is full. You can't do anything until you delete stuff. And then it wouldn't let me delete stuff because it was corrupted. And I was like, oh, you fucker. You fucker.
All I can say is that
Daniel!
you get this.
Look at him. There he is. Daniel, welcome. And what is happening?
Stay away.
Stay away? No way. So for any that don't know, I like to collect pictures of people holding up copies of Final Fantasy VIII.
Umar, you sure you want to do that right now?
Hey, everything's going
it's Ethan.
Oh, hey.
And that is our Daniel. Welcome on, buddy. Daniel recently got partner as well.
Yeah, no,
lovely,
I'm
lovely
good.
fella. If you
I'm good.
drop him a wee follow and check out
me.
his stream, you'll have a wonderful time.
She's not dead. She's alive. She's back.
They found her? How? What happened?
We all
I don't
some
know.
OneDrive issues, so hey, happens to be
I
all
don't
the
know
time.
how,
But
she's back. She's back somehow. Maybe it's a prank. But she wants me to come and get her.
All the walk-ons and shoutouts and stuff are working
Dovey.
out. The
Dovey, Louisiana.
check-ins, I need to go fix it because it's in the C-sharp
I know,
code.
but what if it is her? I have to find out what happened.
Game's very loud, you're very loud. Oh, is he complaining about the audio again? Fucking hell. Well, just turn the audio off of the game. Me being over the top? Not over the top at all. Not there. Everyone needs a wee bit more Daniel in their life, and that's the problem. It is a smidge loud. What if I just take off the volume altogether? Will that fix it? Will that fix it? Everybody happy then? Eh?
This is the place.
I laughed so hard. Ready? What is happening? Thank you. Thank you, Irish. Yep, definitely. I'm ready. You weren't sub to me, and why was that? Where'd you go? Can I leave? No, the game doesn't let me leave. Fucking hell. I know! Fucking that flim-flam man comes in here complaining all the time. And then doesn't even appreciate my theories on Loop Theory. Or Raccoon City 2. I know. Want me to slap him? Sierra, we all want you to slap him constantly. Okay, that was a bit of a map. Okay, that's what we got. Not much theories. Facts, Tomahawk. Jesus, I knew I loved you. There's a good reason for that, but due to non-disclosures, I'm unable to disclose why.
7 minutes is all I
Yes.
can spare to play with you.
Theories on loop theory. Is it a theory or is it fact? Actually, technically, there is no such thing as fact. There's no such thing as scientific fact because science is constantly learning. Everything is a theorem. And even if it's proven to be fact, it's still theory because there's something on down the road that could disprove it. The facts, yes. That looked like pushing that button made it go, do it, lady. Can't get on. Hello? I'm supposed to be here. Oh, that's badly flooded. Yeah, I'm not going to drive my car in there now. Do it, lady. I have to admit, I do miss Snake Plissken, the next Snake Plissken one.
I'm sorry. I don't have
I might
good
swap it over.
brains.
I think it's been fully proven. There's no other theory. It's how handsome Leyoric. Ah, ready. Shucks. Oh, coming in with the compliments. I'm going to have to forgive you now for everything you've ever done. Including that time you squeezed my bum. Maybe it's off following Ready Crash as well. He is a Northern Irish streamer. He also has the most luscious silver mane a man could have. And I'm jealous of him. What am I looking at? Okay. Okay. Join us? No baller. How do I sign up? What's this? This is the camera stuff. Camera stuff. Or surveying equipment. You asked me to. I know, but I didn't think you'd squeeze so hard. It nipped me. It nipped me. Wonderful Biohazard. Can't imagine anything going wrong here. Well, I don't think so. It seems nice. It seems nice. I'm out of wee nature walk now, apparently. Might sell cookies. Do it, Lady Intercom. Oh, Pogs, thank you very much for clipping that. I'm buzzing tonight and tomorrow. I need to feel a little breeze there on my scalp. Oh, you joining me? You proud to be bald? You proud to be bald? Did you get rid of the check-in? Yes, I had to get rid of the check-in because it's not... You know what? Well, I'll just fix it now on stream. It's not technically working. So what is happening is I deleted words. I deleted OneDrive, and because that, all my file formats are fucked up now. I didn't really notice it too much at the very start, but since then now it's been an absolute nightmare. So if I did the sign in, I mean, all I really have to do is remove the OneDrive indicator and that'll go straight to the correct location. One would hope. One would fucking hope. Save and compile. Sign in ledger, it's not there, not there. Hall of Fame, no. Boss bar, that is also execute code, so does that, yeah, it looks at the same location. I do have a manual reset here as well, which is nice. A clear file. That is also looking for the OneDrive. It's such an intrusive piece of software. I don't want to back anything up on OneDrive. I don't like to back anything up on OneDrive, but for some fucking reason, it decides that it needs to go throw all your files on OneDrive. It's like, oh, you've used up 5 gigabytes. So now do you want to pay for more? And I'm like, no, I don't. I didn't even want to use it in the first place. Go away. Right, okay. Save and compile. So, because I noticed it would hook check then. It did do a lot of the stuff right. But it... so this should bring up a completely blank ledger now. Nope. It's going to bring up hook. It's going to bring up a completely blank roster now. Yes. Party level still 25 though. That's a worry. Because it should reset that as well. Execute code. I didn't. Why does not work? No, it should do party level back to 0. OneDrive can be a pain. Oh, it's an absolute nuisance. Absolute nuisance. So if I put that back on, that should then work. And we'll see then. We'll deal with any annoyances that come up as it goes. They're the path to all things in StreamerBot. I know. Fucking hate OneDrive. But like it took over my desktop as well, so even stuff stored on my desktop, it would then... Oh. Hello? Sir? Even stuff stored on my desktop, it would be OneDrive desktop. Fable, what's happening? Resident Evil said, Bald Hazard. Fair play. You know what, you're right. You're right. You're right. Massive fan of RE. I never really got too much into the RE games. I played the OG ones back in the day. But it wasn't until this year I played through the remakes and all properly and fucking love them. They're class. Brilliant. Fable, thank you so much for coming on. Anybody in my chat as well is not following Fable. She is a wonderful streamer. Plays a lot of Dead by Daylight. Does playing through Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment as well. Great wee community. They're all very, very good crack. Good fun. What's this? What's this? Oh dear. Oh dear. I'm hoping it's a deer, not like a cow or something. Crouch. I'm crouching. So, man, what's happening? Welcome on. Follow. Thank you, Blamash. My first ever playthrough on the PlayStation with RE. Which one are you playing? You starting off on RE1 or at the end of the stream, Flamash, make it to the house? Potentially. If I don't keep having streamer bot issues. That didn't come up with the audio for it, though. Didn't come up with any of the audio for it. We're fixing as we go. Fixing as we go. Soma, thank you so much for checking on. That one came up? And is it going to be a file path issue? Bet you it fucking is. The audio should be... Oh, everybody's checking on now. Well, at least all the stuff reset properly. Go studio mode and check in. And I guarantee that everything is in the wrong place. It's picking up all that stuff, alright. Party level. Well, we're just not getting the butler rights. James Lee, thank you for checking on. James Lee, you. You know what, we'll just go with it. We'll go with it. It's fine. We just don't have the noises mix. It's fine. It's fine. At the moment I'm on my second run. I cannot wait for Requiem. But I'm playing him in order, so I'm eventually going to get there. Don't let James Lee in here. He keeps removing my glasses, the swine. Well, stop having a redeem on that removes them. Right. Well, we've made it to a house. What's this? Examine in detail. Oh! Oh! Achievement unlocked. Right. We've done it. We've done it, folks. We have completed the game. I don't know what this tells me. What is this telling me? Mia Winters. Okay, okay. 18th of July. It's almost her birthday. Oh no, that was sent 18th of July. Right, okay. Anybody that's not following James Lee, please do so as well. Wonderful stream. Playing through The Witcher at the moment. Big fan of Final Fantasy. Yes, like I had. Happy days. Right, okay. Should I eat these? They're not technically green herbs. They're more brownish yellow. That James Lee guy smells incredibly good. He smells with his nose. As we all do. As everybody knows. Oh. Who closed the door? Do I have black nail polish on? No, it's just shadows. I thought it was really cool there for one point. Maybe part of a band. Maybe living that rock and roll lifestyle. I'll shut the door behind me. I don't trust people. I don't trust them. Close an open door behind yourself. Why is that a thing? This is very PT. Actually, I'm a bit of a lady. I'm a bit like the lady in Metal Gear, except in my case, I smell through every pore of my body. Metal Gear. Whose footprints are these? Well, this is what I do in my wardrobe to stop me from getting dressed, apparently. Right, okay. Are we going to do dishes? Well, that was a thing. That was a thing. What we got? Ew.
Ah, fuck!
Somebody didn't clean that out. Just a bit of a fixer-upper. It is. It is. To be fair, like, I don't know what they were cooking in the microwave, but I'm just going to leave that in there. Just going to leave that in there. What's in the fridge? Why is it stringy? What the fuck could be stringy in a fucking fridge? That house is a plumbing issue. I think you need to get that microwave out. No, no saving that. The microwave's fucked. Microwave is fucked. What's this? This is some picture. Okay. I can't open that one. All right. Okay. Microwave crow is a delicacy. I hear it is. I hear it is. See, as long as you pair it with a nice sauce, you're flying. Like, as long as you put something moist in with it, the dryness and the taste of despair goes away. I am very conscious as well. I can't punch anything, or I can't fight. I'm unsure why. Oh, there's McKinn's. Are you saying that you're the right man, the right tool to fix this plumbing? Yes. His name is Mario, and he shouts Yahoo! But he gets very, very... Mario... The problem with Mario in Resident Evil games is he went around collecting people. You know, he went around and got Jill, and he went and got Chris. And when Nemesis went star, Mario went, Yahoo! I got the star! And we don't know why he did that. Weird. Oh, it's your own Mia. That was the original idea about, does anything need taste bad have some meat juice? Yes. Yes. The roux of the juice. Oh, I somehow feel I have to get a fuse for there. Chin! Not chin. Not chin. Not chin at all. Which notifications are shite these days? It was Steam Train was saying about that the last time as well. Okay. This photo is cell shaded. Does that work in certain piece of 6 each? Flamash, I will ban your ass. Will fucking ban you. TV is on, so we have Lecky. We can play Xbox. It's fine. Fine. Certain meat can eat anything, but yeah, anything. That entails that is part of the problem. Right, I must have to go upstairs then. The arse will be banned, but the rest of you is permitted. But the rest of them is the worst part. His arse is the best bit. I wonder how close Flamash is to the line of getting banned. He is more than anybody. Flamash has lived on the line of permanent bannage. He is the most close to being banned and not banned that I've ever met. But no threat of a ban to him. No, because Reddy is once in a while he'll do it. You are constant. And then you have your spoilers as well. Because apparently there's a section coming up in this game
That's a pretty good shot, kid. Now how about aiming at the enemy?
His arse is the best bit. Someone clip that. Aye. Flamash works out. I'm just telling you. That man goes up and down stairs like nothing normal. You would think eating all the hot sauce would make him have a spicy arse, but there you go. You dance the line of being banned beautifully. Yes, you do. You do. It's like, I'm going to ban him. But it was quite funny that time. Yeah. Stairs? Why is there a button for stairs? It's not responding. I wouldn't think so. So what am I doing? I got a tape. Go downstairs and see what's on this. I hope it's Transformers or Thundercats. That'd be good. Fuck! May. Why? Why? Okay. Okay. I'm not sure how I feel about this. They're coming to get you. I'm just being polite, and they're knocking. But that actually makes it worse, because then you know that they're coming to get you. Right, I'm watching the tape. Watch the tape. Is it Transformers? Is it Transformers? It might just be. Barry Potter, welcome in. What is happening? Why are you Ian? Why are you Ian? Not Ian as an IAN.
I only work with professionals.
May likes to
Speaking
eat.
of which, make sure the sound is right this time. I don't want a repeat of Amarillo.
That was 2
Does this
fucking
let me
years
leave?
ago.
I don't do ADR.
Why do these games not let me leave? Oh,
This new guy?
lock
Not
back.
feeling it. Again? Just don't be
Lock.
surprised if we have to make a change.
Back. Thank you very much for the lurk as well. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on and chatting.
We do a walkthrough of the inside first, then we shoot the intro.
Just
So-
like we always do.
Am I in the tape
Try
now?
to say the show's name
Is
this
this,
time, okay?
is this loop theory?
No problem. Tonight on Sewer Gators, another worthless fucking shithole. Happy?
Ecstatic.
I don't think they're happy. Sean, thank you very much for checking in. I will look at the audio on that as well and, and figure out why. Or maybe it's better silent, I don't know. Today's party, that isn't reading the party right. That is not reading the party correctly at all. Oh, not found. Hasn't found the audio for it. Because it's looking for the one drive. The one drive isn't there. Looking for the one drive, but it's not there. You're looking for Peter Pan, but it's not there. I want to delete the thing, so it might be there. And why is it not updating the roster properly? Because again, OneDrive. Fucking hate OneDrive. It is the most annoying bit of software. It's like my name's OneDrive. Fuck you, OneDrive. I will go back and look through the redeems after this as well, and I will bump everybody's level up if it hasn't done so already. Yeah, you're watching tape. Spoilers!
Are we rolling?
Spoilers, spoilers.
All right, let's go.
Get out of the way.
There we go. We're
It's
working.
locked.
It might just put your name on though, because I think it must put everyone else's name on. It has done the party level okay.
Why are we
But
in hell this time? Do you ever prep?
Hogs, your
Prep,
clip
shit,
is
house, spooky sounds,
the top
booze,
clipper
and
with 5
haunted.
views. My God.
Fuck me. I was an anchor, you know?
But he said a bad word.
Not anchor.
What's that?
Nothing.
I already got through here.
What's the story, Andre?
Abandoned farmhouse, missing family, foul play suspected.
I feel like there's someone behind me.
How long did you say this place has been abandoned?
3 years.
Oh, the door's closed. Who closed the door?
Let's make a
Who?
great cutaway.
Fucking close that door.
So, Hillbilly Joe and his family go missing.
Not hillbillies, the Bakers. Jack and Marguerite Baker. And they were quiet, not backward.
Is this nice
A lot of
now?
bad rumors about their son, Lucas.
Nope, still pass
Bad
out.
seed, apparently.
Fuck!
Ah, shit! I know I should have worn my good shoes.
Oh, can I unlock this? Use it, unlock, and pick to open some.
Shit.
What's on it?
Glad I had my shots.
That's the picture that was in the other drawer. The
This
fuck?
make a great backdrop. Andre, what do you think? Andre? Andre!
Where'd he go? In here?
Andre! Clancy, you see where Andre went?
I don't know.
Where is he?
Oh, hello, Papa. I was just about
Chrissy
to...
Poo, welcome in.
This is the last time I work with that guy.
I do not like it. You have made
I
me
mean,
to look
producer,
like
let
the
it
silly
go.
cows, and I am
Good
not a
cameraman
silly
like you,
cows.
Clancy.
I am a strong and
You step away.
agile German shepherd.
I have
Keine
Dolby
dumme
Atmos on my headset, and the noggin always makes me turn around. I know, and I have the Arctis earbuds as well, and I can fucking hear too.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. Fucking did. As you did, Chrissy. I am doing well. I am doing well.
Sorry,
a lot
we're
of technical
going-
issues
we're
tonight,
going
but
streaking
doing good. Thank you
through
so
the
much for the
quad
streak.
And into the gymnasium. Come on, everybody!
Where the fuck is he?
I don't know. Real me was just in here watching a videotape, and now I'm doing all this shit.
Andre,
So,
where are you, man?
fucking okay. Chrissy, thank you for signing on. I think it has something to do with the piano.
What the hell?
How did... The fuck? Did you see that?
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Hmm.
All right, new deal. We find Andre and we go. I mean, fuck this show.
Can I find Andre 3000? I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I am for real. We're not going down there.
You first.
Oh, go
Need a
fuck
nice
yourself.
hero shot of me coming down the ladder. So,
Oh, you son of a bitch.
you first.
Hate this house. Hate this house. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I am for
What do you see?
heels.
What is it?
Oh, no. He's... Look at him. He's on his tippy toes. He's on his tippy toes. That's so fucking weird. No. Well, that's not good. It's Blair out. It is. It's fucking weird. I don't like it. I love the mean comic, whatever you want to call it. What? Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize 1,000,000,000 times, I know. Right, so I'm supposed to go there. Oh, fuck. Right, okay. I opened the drawer in the kitchen. Does that open? Like they... Fuck. Oh, it was me. Jesus Christ. Aye, so it does open. I got an antique coin. Sweet. I'll send you on Discord. Ah, right, okay. Cool. So I have to go down that hole now. So, is that switch there even before you watch the tape? But can you just walk over? I've already looked in. Can you just walk over and press the switch instead of watching the tape? Like if you're speedrunning it or something? And are we on first playthrough? No, right, okay, I'm on first playthrough, so it wouldn't work on me. Well, you wouldn't know it was there in first playthrough anyway. Alright, okay. Can't see anything. Fuck. Oh! I'm dead. I've died in poo.
Damn it.
Alright, okay. I'm not going to swim in that, am I? Is that fecal matter? Amongst other things, I think it's like 90% fecal matter. It's like mostly poo. Mostly poo. With a little bit of urine and probably other bodily liquids. Liquid. Snake, dear brother. Liquid. What's that noise? What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? What is farting in this water? Oh, fuck. Hey. Right, well, there's a little bit more shit than piss in there now, just because I've added it. Who are these people? Oh, fuck, there's loads of them. Okay. I still don't know what my mechanics are for this game. Yeah. Oh, is that the cell from earlier? Bed does not look comfy. What was that? Lots of pointy hooks. So approach it more like RE1. Okay, right, so if I want to turn, I turn like a tank, and then forward, and back, and turn, and forward. Can I go sideways? No, no. I can go sideways, it doesn't count.
Mia?
I'm gonna look up and see if there's anything I can lift. Ooh, bolt cutters. The classic bolt cutter. Ben, dead. Harold, dead. Arthur, dead. Tamara, Craig, Leah, Sean, William, Travis, Peter, Andre, and Clancy. Clancy's alive! Clancy's alive. Thank fuck. He was my favorite out of all of them. But I mean, mechanically, it's like first-person RE. You're like first-person RE. Can I use this for the thing upstairs? Mia! Is it going to be her or is it going to be like some weird monster?
Oh, thank God I found you. It's me. It's Ethan.
Ethan?
Mia! It's
Ethan?
Are you alright?
me.
You shouldn't be here.
What do you mean? You contacted me.
No, I wouldn't. Did I? Did anyone see you? Did he see you?
Who else is here? What the hell's going on?
Daddy's coming. We need to go.
Daddy?
We need to go now!
That was freaky. There's not a light on here?
Where are you taking me?
Someplace safe.
Are you gonna tell me what's going on? Baby, you've been gone 3 years.
3 years? Has it really been 3 years?
Hold on. Hold on. She's been gone 3 years, then she contacts me to come get her. Am I playing Silent Hill 2? Is this loop theory again? Also, we're not being very stealthy. I have a flashlight here. Can I turn my flashlight off? Apparently not. Don't I just keep it on?
What is this place? What'd they do to you?
Not now. We need to get out of here first. I think it's this way.
Well, at least they have a wee tap down here to keep it nice and clean. They're eating the people. Bags of meat. Like, I don't condone ever eating a person, but obviously you're going to get some weird sort of diseases if you're not going to store the meat properly, at least in some sort of refrigeration unit.
That wasn't me.
But you did.
I didn't.
Okay, fine. Just tell me what's going on.
I'm telling you everything that I know. We have to go this way.
Let's just go back out the way I came in. I know that I broke the ladder a little bit, but you can still climb it. Fine. I'll build a new one.
Are you sure you know where you're going?
Family used to bring me food through here. I remember.
Okay, that's weird. That's it. It's more thematically like first person RE1. You make a very good point, Happy Irish, and you know what? You told me that Monster Hunter Wilds was great, and it was, so you've never been wrong in the past.
There. It's there. This is it.
This is it. I know this is a very serious situation,
Another door here.
but
I'm sure of it.
whenever I'm afraid, I tend to sing.
It's not here. It's gone. It's gone.
What we're looking for?
We're gonna be a family now that you're here.
What?
There's another door here. I'm sure of it.
What's this? E001. I hope that's a password to someone's computer. See, Maxie, thank you very much for the follow. You were in May's stream earlier as well. Ooh, RE game. This is an RE game you have played. That's right. I remember you mentioning that. I have not played this. I am going in completely blind, and it's kind of a little bit freaky so far. The problem I have with you is that you mess about with me so much I don't genuinely know if you're adding to the conversation or trying to bother me. Well, much, I will safely say it's probably both. Coming from a man who little doll, who enjoys annoying you, I would say it's probably both. I'm not taking the...
No, leave me alone.
Nope. Fuck! Return her to me! She'll run. And see if they're like there's no ghosties in this, so they're physically doing these things to freak me out, and it's very well played. They should actually rent this place out and do it to scare tourists. They would make a fortune. Ring. Hello? Nope. I'm disappointed when he doesn't come into my stream to give me fake trivia. Aww. You need to play Monster Hunter. That'll do it. Play more Monster Hunter. Ooh, got a map. Okie dokie. Right, okay. Ooh, this is where the people poop. This is where we poop. Don't know what that was, but we loved it. Oh, there's another one. We're getting more of them. We're getting more of them. We're collecting all of the wee bottles of whatever it is. That could have something good for you, but it can't be too obvious. What is it banging? Nope. Oh, it's a bit creepy. Is it back down here? Oh, for fuck's sake, Sierra. Whew. The banging is making me uneasy as fuck. I know, RE4 Remake was in a good sale on PSN the other week, so I had to get it. RE4 Remake is a wonderful game. I have a tier list of where I'm ranking my Resident Evil playthrough so far. And this is my... So, RE4 and RE2 Remake are my top two. Then RE1 Remake, RE3 Remake, and RE5. RE6 is Flamash's favourite one, and it's clearly the best. So I think that's going to rank even higher. RE6 can get fucked. See, he loves RE6 so much. Flamash is sexually attracted to it, and I appreciate that, man. I think fair play to you. Fair play to you. Your love of RE6 is phenomenal. He told me to do it. I didn't know why. I knew you were too honest and Sarah. It wouldn't be. It's his bad influence that did it. It's him. I have Monster Hunter game, Monster Hunter Wilds. Cody, Monster Hunter Wilds is phenomenal. It's a great game, and I cannot wait for the DLC to come out. Ooh, I need to play RE2. RE2 Remix is great. Definitely, I strongly recommend it. It's a wonderful game. Stop playing it then. Prove the accusations wrong. I know. Hey, every time you look at him, he's playing RE6 either by himself or with his wife, or, you know, he's so inconsistent. This is why you're my favorite person in the chat. See, Cody, you've already made a best friend. Right, so we have to go back down the stairs then. Unless I'm supposed to come in the bathroom. You would hate to live in this house, not just because of all the creepiness. But what happened if you got up in the middle of the night and you really need to go to the toilet? You come in and you sit. The breeze and the draft coming through this window would be fierce. Once you pull down your trousers, your testicles will be frozen off you. We rage quit it last week and uninstalled it midstream. Ah, it's just you being dramatic. You're going to install it again, aren't you? If Burton turned around to you and said, "Can you play RE6 with me?" You'd jump right in there. Oh, if you woke up and needed to use the toilet, the risk of getting... Oh, what the fuck? Is that Mia? She's let herself go. She's let herself go. In the last few minutes I've seen her, she's really gone downhill. Speak of the man, and he shall appear. Mayraid, I think. Hello, yes, Burton. Yes, it's the Mayraid. Thank you very much for coming on. Oh, I got stabbed.
Yeah. Wait!
Fuck! Actually, you know what? I know that she's stabbing me, but still, Ethan, that's very rude to grab her by the face. I don't approve. What am I supposed to do? Oh, I got stabbed! Again. She got back to the PC, was doing stuff around the house. Not a problem, Burton. Not a worry.
I can feel her clawing her way back inside of me. Get out! Leave me alone!
Oh, don't do that. You're going to wreck that wall.
I deserve this.
Oh. Yeah. That's not good.
Oh, hello, Papa. I was just about to...
the silly cows.
On my head. I do not like it. You have made me to look like a
Also apply
cows,
first
and I
aid
am
to
not a
myself
silly
and not my
cows.
wife
I am
on the
a
ground.
strong and agile German Shepherd. Kinda
yeah.
Dumaku.
Can I help her up? What? Right, okay. Still can't go in that door. Oh shit, it's already 7. I will hit the lurk. Haven't got here yet. Not a problem, Burton. Not a worry. Am I just going to leave her there? No, not. How did I get her back up then? Can I grab her foot and drag her? Oh no! She got up herself. It's fine. It's fine. She's okay. We're holding hands. Oh, she's got her knife back, which is good. Oh, there's an axe. I'll ask her a question. Can I dodge? What can I do? Oh, fuck! Didn't mean to do it. Oh, sorry. 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 Oh! Sorry. Sorry. You can block. I got that. I just scrolled up and had it send. What was it? Why does my message always drop into the next message? I was meant for Flamash. Ah, right, okay. It's if chat's moving a wee bit fast, it sometimes happens. Where I do it the same, where I reply to the wrong person. It's a hatchet and an ask. Annihilator, I am so glad you're here. I was making a fool of myself. I was walking about here going, this is an axe, and the people of the internet would be like, oh my god, he doesn't know the difference between a hatchet and an axe. But Annihilator comes straight in, and I bet you're wearing a flamboyantly phenomenal shirt. Was that meant for me? Yes. The game label. Oh, I'm okay. So the game lied to me. Fuck's sake. This is like loop theory all over again. What's in this room? Also, who closed the bathroom door? Sitting in my cax, you sexy sausage, you. No shirt, it's too hot. I've had to wear a shirt. I'm wearing me near automatoma one.
Zoe. There should be a way out through the attic.
The ceramic in your hole. That's funny, right? Okay.
Go there. Now.
Forgot I said that. Flummus forgets everything. He says things in a moment. He is a reactive man. These are now available on OnlyFabs. No, Annihilator. I will not have you put yourself down like that. You are a handsome man. You are on OnlyFans, and you're a number. Oh, where'd she go? Shit. She's not here. I'm going to get my hatchet, not my axe. Well, at least she opened the door for me. Annihilator, I will not have this self-deprecation from you, sir. Oh, so that just takes me back here. Right, okay. Can I just leave? Or can I go through here? I feel like this should work. Okay, Link, please. Is that your man out of the Zeldas? Oh, I can open the cupboard out here. Fuck. The fuck is that? The fuck was that? The hatchet would definitely work on chopping wood. I would think so. That's what I use my hatchets for. Ah, the fuse. So upstairs, I think it was then with the fuse, wasn't it? Oh shit. There's herself. I wonder how she's feeling today. And she's nowhere to be seen. Is she there? Let's go check around all corners just in case she's hiding on me. Oh! I could save. I could save. Where did I see... It was down in the living room I seen that fuse. I'm running round the house with my wee hatchet on me. Wee hatchet on me. Wee hatchet on me. I'm running round the house. Got my wee hatchet on me. And then there was a button upstairs that said stairs on it. I'm assuming that's where I'm going. Running around the house. What?
It's okay. It's okay. It's me.
Jesus Christ.
I know you didn't mean to hurt me.
You shouldn't have done that!
Yes, I apologized every time I hit you.
It fucking hurts!
Well, that's not good. She really screws me. Running around the house, that lesser known song by the Talking Heads. Mia doesn't like... I think she does. She wants me to stick around, clearly. Oh! She got a chainsaw. Careful now. Oh, fuck, fuck. Well, I've got the hand up there. Híjole! Exactly. Oh, that was actually quite funny. If you go on the May's stream, she says híjole quite a bit whenever she's streaming. And I was all, what does that mean? What does that mean? I'm going to look it up. So I was all, I will go to Google, and I will Google what this means. So I typed in E-hole, and it came up, Gears of War. E-hole stands for emergence hole. It's the hole that the locusts used to invade the world at the very first day of the game. And I was like, yes! Oh, that makes complete sense. So I copied and pasted it in. I was wrong. I was wrong. You know, E-hole. With ads on as well, folks. Apologies. You know what? I'm actually just going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until the ads finish, because this seems like an important part of the game. Don't listen to Flemish. Play the game how you want to do. Ah, thank you. Don't forget to pick up your hand. But if I wiggle it about, is it technically a handshake? Is it? I think so. I think so. So how's everybody Saturday night going as well? Should I just continue on? Just continue. I'm sitting thinking, I'm not hooked. I can't talk for 3 minutes. Also, can I lift my hand? Oh, I can! Hand! Excellent. Can I do anything with it? I can look at it. I can look at it. Got the whole world in my hand. Can I can throw it in the bin. Pretty good one. One drink down. You drinking again? I'm playing WoW. All good. Waiting for Engerland to get dumped out by Haaland and the boys. I knew none of what that meant. No. But you have at least. Right, okay. Mine's going well, apart from the heat. It's not too bad here, but I'm mostly saying that because I have a fan on me. I'm assuming this is the button I needed to press. See if she chops off my other hand. I will be upset. Oh, right, okay. Oh my god, I was snacking on olives and got grossed out with that. Oh, my hand getting chopped off? Yeah. Yeah. Ah well. It was a risk it was a risk she was willing to take. It is an extract. Is it an extractor fan? It is not. It was never at any point a tractor. I've got one on my face, but as soon as I move, a wall of heat hits me. How dare. How? Ooh, that mannequin scared me a wee bit. Do I have my axe? I don't have my axe. I have handgun bullets. I could probably throw them at her. Ooh! Oh, CRT TVs! Lads, we'll get these all hooked up and we'll play some Sega. We'll play Sonic 2. Let's go. Am I supposed to do something? Get them hooked up? Yes, lad. More bullets. What am I going to do with these bullets? I have an extractor above the cooker. That's true, but if you put the cooker on, you'll get even warmer. What's all banging? Resident Evil. More bullets. Oh, there's a gun! Oh, and first aid kit. Ah!
Okay, fine.
Now you're done for. Is she going to burst on this door? No. What's a gun going to do? If I need to shoot something in one of these rooms, is there something to shoot? Ooh, there's a wee ladder. Can I go up there? Oh, I hear. Go back down, Ethan. Go back down. Love, that's not how we install a skylight. Not how it's done.
They're relying on me. Everyone relying on me. Everyone.
Oh, fuck. No. Oh, that'll help my hand grow back. Happy days. Oh, shit. Right. Fuck. Right, okay. Okay, okay. Oh, that's a slow reload. Oh, fuck. No, 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 no. Oh, she's going to hear us Johnny me. Oh, she came from the other side. Fair play.
Contained. She must be contained.
I hope that we can move past this difficult part of our relationship. I will buy you some chocolate and you will forgive me. I will take your chainsaw. Can I take your chainsaw? I cannot take her chainsaw. I feel weird leaving this in the room with her. We'll take a little bit of space, and I will text you tomorrow.
Welcome to the family, son.
Oh fuck! Where'd he come out of? Look at the chainsaws. I do love the Evil Dead. Oh yes, with the hand getting cut off. Jace Racer, thank you. Jace Racer, thank you very much for checking in. Welcome to the family, son. No, it's reverse. How you gonna play Sega with one hand? With my feet. With my feet, McKins. Oh, this game's really dragging. You get it? Because he's dragging me. He's dragging me along the ground. Hello! How are you getting on? What is happening? We are playing...
Don't you die on us now. You have work to do.
My mouse is dead. Although it shouldn't be. Why are you dead, mouse? Oh no, it's fine. Fuck. Thank God I wasn't in the game for that one. But still was loud.
Where am I?
The hand. The swing seats as you enter the house. The car designs.
Head.
Yeah.
It's time for supper.
Who are all you people? Where's Mia?
What's going on? I don't want any of this.
It's good.
Dumb son bitch wasn't no good if it hit him.
Yeah.
This woman here is dead. Why have you stabbed that man?
Get out the way, Marguerite.
His boy's got to eat. He got to have his supper.
Oh, how's my hand back on? Nom 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 nom. Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes. Yes, 100%. Staples? That would.
This was supposed to be a very special feast. My boy.
That knife did not taste good. Oh, they were literally fast stapling me as it woke up. Right, okay. I don't think that's how medicine works, though. I'm no doctor. I'm not a doctor because I don't have the patience. Lady, me and you're going to get out of here. You untie me and I'll lift you. Let's go. Let's go. Let's fucking go. We'll take some of these candles. They're nice and romantic. I like the spam tin. Oh! I've fallen over. Lady, help me. Help me. You're no doctor, and nor are they. They give it their best shot. Well, that's my problem. I don't believe in intravenous drugs. I think they're all in vain. Is she alive? She may be alive. We don't know. She may or may not be alive. She's Schrodinger's old lady. She's both alive and dead at the same time. They have cleared off. This is a slightly better fridge. It's still not 100%. Meal 30s lean gumbo. Mmm. Delicious. Diet flavor. Walk around here and look at her. Ah, she's watching me. She likes my butt. She likes my coconut butt. Oh my god, so creepy. It is creepy. But also, it makes there's a slight sense of warmthness in the fact that, you know, she's watching out for me. She cares. She cares. What's in here? Ooh, cutlery. I shall steal all their spoons and knives. Then what will they do? That is locked. Right, okay. Can this be played in third person? I don't think it can be. I think it is just single, as first person. I don't like the... I enjoy these sort of, you know, repurposed palette. What's the furniture? I think they're kind of cool. What's this? The Unveiled Abyss by Clive R. O'Brien. Very nice, very nice, very nice. Oh. There we go. This must be where they invented TikTok. Oh, is it Ziploc? Where's the TV? I was expecting a nice big CRT there. Oh, I got more bullets. They have a gun? I have no gun. I have 5 bullets. I'll throw it at him. FPS only. Gotcha, Flimosh. Be right back, Cody. Not a problem. Thank you very much. I feel like I should pick this chair up. This would annoy me. This would annoy me. Everything else is so nice in here, and I've just thrown the chair to the ground. What is it here? Can't break it with anything, right? Okay. I think I'll explore over here before we go down the basement. It seems to be almost in some sort of loop, just like loop theory. Oh, fuck. Run! Hide! What's in here? Ah, the classic Resident Evil. Oh my god, they've sellotaped it. I can't remove it unless I have some sort of knife, because sellotape is impossible to remove by hand. Oh, fuck, she's gone. He's walking. Why does he look for me? I can hear him. I can hear him. I like it. Sir, I come in peace. Oh, he is not a happy bunny. I will run. Fuck! Jesus Christ.
You're wasting your time.
Why did he catch up? Fuck, run. Run, Ethan. Run. To the door. Would you stop grabbing me? What's this? Key. It's a key for something. I don't know what that is.
Don't you fuck with me.
Fuck! I'm stuck in a corner. Me in a corner. Me in the spotlight. I'm losing my religion. What? What's this? Oh, he still comes at you when you're... I was looking at that. Fuck off with you. Sir. Well, try not to. I don't know if I should be hiding from him or crouching or... How fast is this fucker? Right. Did I check this room? I did check this room. Did I close the door behind me? That's what you get. That's what you fucking get. Prick. He's pretty fast. He is pretty fast. What items do I have? What are you? Hatch key? Right, so that's the hatch and pantry, right. I don't remember where that was.
Where's my little Ethan?
I don't know. No, actually, I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm not, because then you'll know where I am. Ah, I almost fell for your tricks. I almost fell for them, but I didn't. Figured it out. Fuck. The audio in this is phenomenal.
Here, piggy, piggy, piggy.
Well, that... I've put on a few pounds, but that's not nice. Come on.
You know I'm gonna find you, right?
Yeah.
I do.
Probably, buddy. Right, that's the room I have to get under for the hatch.
Oh,
Fuck.
worried about you.
Fuck! Run! Run, Ethan, to the hatch! That is so slow!
Okay, have it your way.
Por favor! Ah!
Don't be scared.
I am very scared.
All right, have fun under there, boy. I'm gonna come back for you later.
Oh, so weird. So weird. Pretty fast. If you need help, let me know. But for now, I obtained a beverage! I don't fancy doing this in VR. The internet did it in VR, and it was freaky as fuck. Ooh, antique coin. Ian did this in Village in VR, and there was some phenomenal jump scares. Oh, is he still here? I loved those VR streams. They were great. Oh, they were phenomenal. And the thing is, he's very good at the games as well, so... I don't want to get up here yet, because I don't know if he's here. Is that my gun? No, but I can save? Whee! Right. Ooh. Socks. They will defeat him. We will defeat him with his own socks. As he wouldn't go on stage unless I got 4,000 brown M&Ms. I had to beat him to death with his own shoes. Right, so the garage I have to get into and the main hall. Neither I have access to at the moment. Combine items in my inventory. A herb and chem fluid makes a med. Oh, right, okay. Okay. Is this just a big old storage box? Right, driver's license, antique coin. Well, I could probably store you. Herb, first aid med, email from Mia. Right, okay, I don't think I need any of them yet. Right, so if I leave here... Look at this graph! Look at this graph! Hear him wandering about out there. As long as he doesn't know I'm on here, I think I'm okay.
Solid Snake.
Big boss. I'm playing your favorite game.
That is not Solid Snake.
Ooh, what are you? Rotate? Yes, I shall rotate. What is on here? A screwdriver? A lockpick? What locks could I be opening? Jim Beam and coat. Very nice. Get some Dr. Pepper. Right, so there's a drawer down there. I'm assuming I have to kind of go for that. I unlock this door. Is he going to walk towards that phone? Quick hello, hope you're well. About to watch the football shortly, Big Boss. I am well, thank you very much for calling in. Having a wee chat. Let me see what this is first. Health? Right, okay. Any bouts off phone, Big Boss? Check them out. Where is that phone? Did I run past it? Phone. Phone. What's on here? Right, okay. Big Boss. Big B. Big Boss. B. Where the fuck is the phone? Where's the table? Oh, was it in here? It was. Can you watch McGregor's fight on PC somewhere? I have no idea.
Zoe.
Is he fighting tonight, is he?
What the fuck are they?
Shut up and listen if you want to stay alive.
Yeah, if he's fighting somewhere and it'll appear on your monitor. Technically, Flamash is correct.
Oh, and that thing on your wrist is a codex. Don't lose it. It's important.
I don't know who that was. You can also watch it on a TV.
Girl.
I know I probably shouldn't be over. It doesn't actually show up on mine, but I appreciate the on-screen celebration of me with hair. Right, so I have... Did I go out to that main hall? Did I try for that? Is that what I'm going for? I know I have to get something to cut the garage door, but I don't have a lockpick or anything anymore. Right, we'll go for it. I don't know if Jack is still here. Are you asking for advice that legally watch a sporting event? I know, on Twitch too, of all places, where all the legal stuff happens. That's your man from earlier. Lucas, or one had Jack as I call him. And that looks to be your man and his wife. Lovely. Right, this was a puzzle. I'm probably looking for bits of it. I never got to explore anything over here because I was too busy shitting myself. I mean, legally I was going to pay for it, but I don't know who's streaming it. The tubes. I don't know if anyone on Twitch would be streaming it. I'm not too sure. Right. Oh, I could have had there. I cannot use one of these knives. No. Heaven hath forbid. I use one of them.
Hey.
So. Oh.
Hey, over here.
Hello, Mr. Policeman.
Hey, you gotta help me.
Hold on, back up. Now, sir, do you live here? I mean, is this your property?
What?
No.
Me, no. No.
All right. Now, we got several calls about some missing persons lately.
You don't understand. I gotta get out of here.
She be well asleep.
Calm down.
You're not listening.
What
to
time
me.
is it?
There's
Is it
crazy
late?
people in this house trying to fucking kill me.
Well, all right. Let me tell you this. You don't exactly seem like you playing with a full deck yourself.
4 a.m.
Are you
Fuck
kidding
off.
me?
No, not a chance.
Like
Not
I
a
said,
chance.
We've had several missing persons calls.
As much as I'd love to
And
see
I
someone
can't
beat
go
up Conor
lie
McGregor,
that an
no
outsider
way.
like yourself may
In
not
his
be
chair,
involved.
on stream.
Right.
Oh, if I'm watching one of them moods.
All right. Now that's more like it. Now, meet me
It's going to be oh, how do you find this game? Oh, I should be like, oh, I normally click on Steam and then go down to where the game
in
is.
the garage. We'll talk there.
Hey, wait. You gotta give me your gun.
Yeah, dude, I got bullets. I got 5 bullets here.
Fine.
Look, officer.
Deputy.
Right. Deputy. Now, do you want to see my name in the
Nope.
obituaries? Or do you want to be
That's a
hero and
thing,
save my
Pog
life?
stud. Right, okay. Oh, no way.
A fucking pocket knife?
Here. Take it. That's all you're gonna get.
And I shall use this
Go.
to get into the garage.
Now.
Oh, I'm a
What am I going to do with a knife?
I wonder, Ethan. Oh, fuck. I didn't mean that. Stop being the healing button. I got more bullets. Was there more boxes I needed to break? I think there was one in here, wasn't there? Maybe. No, maybe not. Maybe it was just that one. Where are you, Jack? I can now stab things. Stab! Feels like there's less and less furniture every time I walk into this room. Can I, like, break the glass? No. Oh, look at the VHSs! Lovely jubbly. Good VHS. Still don't know what this is. Right, okay. Nothing in here. Nothing in here for me. So I'm just going down to the garage then. It's nice that they put a wee sign there, because otherwise I would never have known. Right, okay. A knife. Sellotape's ultimate weakness. I shudder to think what's in here. Oh, it's a police officer.
Hey, we got to get the fuck out of here.
Now, first, you need to tell me what you're doing out here alone in the middle of the night.
Me? What about you?
No, it's my job. Won't you do your job and tell me? Answer my questions.
Dude, don't be so aggressive. Get us out of here.
Try me.
Oh.
Hey, put that door back. Put that door
Ah!
back.
Fuck. That's some shovel. Oh, got a gun. It's alright. I'm fully loaded. Let's go.
Fuck it. I'm gonna kill every one of you.
Can I just get out? I'm in the car. I'm gonna go. Let's go. I need a key. Shit. I don't have a key. What's this? It's the key. I got a key. Oh, Jack, go away. Let me get on my car. Sir. Sir. Sir.
Where in the hell you think you're going to, son?
I'm leaving. No. No. It's just a flash one. It is. Now it's a convertible.
Better start running, boy.
If I stay here, you can't get me. That's not how cars work. Oh shit, it is how cars work! No! He knows what he's doing. He's better than me. I'm sorry, that was really impressive. Well done, Jack.
I'm gonna get you.
I reckon so. I think you are going to get me.
Don't move now.
I'll try not to, but you know what? You're making it difficult for me. You're making it difficult. What in tarnation? Exactly. I don't know if shooting him is doing anything. Oh, I'm dead. You are dead. You are dead. It's just a scratch. He'll be fine. Just a flesh wound. Viva la Razzle. Viva la Raza. Don't know why he's had a grow, but there he is. He was in Colin McRae in a past life. I would imagine so. Like, those were some sick moves. I'll try and not use up my health items straight away.
Hey, we gotta get the
We get the...
fuck out of here.
Now, first, you need to tell me what you're doing out here alone in the middle of the night.
Me?
Can't skip it. Where does he appear from, though?
Won't you do your job and tell
Like, there's no
Answer
one
my
on
questions.
either side of him.
You're not gonna believe me if I told
The shutter goes down,
Hey,
and then he just appears. So, where did he come from? So, get the gun. Get the key. Can I get out? Just get in the car. Let's go!
I'm gonna kill every one of
I'm in the car now, you motherfucker. Oh, got him. I didn't know I could do that. Sweet. Oh, payback, bitch. I'm Colin McRae now. I'm dead. Oh, fuck. Ah, get out. Ethan, leave. Holy
Let's
shit.
finish this, you and I. Oh yeah.
Can I get out? Can I get out? Can I get out? Can I get out? Oh, right, okay. Okay. This is not great. I thought I came in under it. On the garage door. It was a closed tab. You don't see him do it. Oh, shit. Right, okay. Came out of the ground like a T-1000. He did. He's liquid metal. Well, that's not good.
Oh boy.
Oh, fuck. Are you still alive?
You know?
Why am I still alive? My face is in his bum. My face is in his bum. Can I get out this way? No. Whew. They Almost Die Forever was good fun. The DLC this month was insignificant though. Coming from the man who can't beat it in fucking Leon Must Die mode or hardcore or whatever. Absolutely love this game. There's DLC coming for RE9 this month. Oh, that's what we're chatting about. How do I leave? Oh, poor cop guy. Dead. I would assume I leave via the ladder, but he does. Oh, he does. Oh, fuck!
Do I have your attention, boy? You're about to see something wonderful. Oh, fuck!
Right. Okay, I'm going. What mods am I playing on this? I have no mods on it. It's just the base game. Hang on. There's a thing. There's a thing I need. Stop it. The DLC this month is amiibo stuff for the Switch. Yes. What is this? Why would this be a thing? Why would this be a thing? Resident Evil, and they're fucking weird. They Almost Die is sort of roguelike mode. We're referring to Insanity difficulty. That was the one you failed at horribly. That's right. Does it have assisted and standard? Oh, mode? Yes, I think I had assisted and standard. This is standard mode. So I'm going to save actually first, in case that fucker comes back. Aha! I didn't have 20 points. You decided to do that. That was self-inflicted. Self-inflicted. Oh. Oh, no, I've already looked at that. Wait, how long? That was over there. Or no, was it? Oh, Mia's in the bad books. Mia's in the bad books. I love Jack's Elvis impersonation. Welcome to the family, son. Uh-huh. Yes, that's how doors work. Oh, it's just more fucking house. Right, okay. Oh, another coin. Nicely job. Admire cup. Do I have cup? Let me see. What cup do I have? Ruthie, welcome on. I have my mug. My mug is the most cup I have. That is it. But it has a picture of me on it, so that's good. That's good, isn't it? That's good. Well, the other thing I have is a glass to have juice in. Ruthie, what's happening? Welcome on. That was for charity. People donating, inflicting punishments. Who knew you were a generous bunch? Well, that was your fault. You hung about with people who are nice and generous. That counts. Yes!
Did my daddy give you a hard time?
That's your father?
Yeah, Eddie.
He used to be.
I'm sorry, but he's dead.
You got merch? I don't have merch.
You
It
just might
was
be able to pull this off.
the Hook's sister, Legolas. She might call in at some point.
There's something I need you to do, but
She
I
has a
can't
business
explain
where
it
she
right
prints
now.
stuff out, and she did
You may need
cups
some sort
and
of keys
t-shirts
to
for
do
me
it,
and
but
Hook.
find a way out of the house.
Just for a bit of crack.
I'll be in touch.
But it's actually a really, really good quality mug, so I can use it for everything. Not a Ben Star. Oh, Ruth, that's a fucking brilliant idea. I should have a Ben Star mug. I should have a Ben Star mug. And also, if I say Ben Star at all during stream, you do exclamation mark Ben plus. Does she actually? Yes. Just like Flemish did there now. And that doesn't work either because Ben Star is going to somewhere in the OneDrive, you son of a. Yep, saying not found. Have to go through everything to figure it out.
Hi, I'm Ben
There we
Starr.
go. There's Ben
And if
Starr.
you're anything like me,
Legend himself.
then you absolutely love me.
Yes, she does. She does. How much for a lock of this wonder? Well. I'll grow it out for you, big boss. I'll grow it back just for you. Be disappointed if it isn't the trooper cover. I want to show you my Iron Maiden tanker. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Fired on the Maze Discord. Sure, and I'll have a wee look. If May doesn't mind. I don't know what this is. Looks like a 3-headed dog. Wait, what's this? Shotgun shells? Oh, I got a shotgun. I can combine stuff. Oh, I accidentally made more bullets. You know what? There's no such thing as an accident. I wanted to make more bullets. Go for it. Awesome, thank you. Scorpion door. Block pendulum. Does that go back into the previous one? I wonder. You know, I might just go do that now and see if it fits. Shoot me. Shoot me. I understand that that's a little collectible, but I don't care enough to waste my ammo on you. I'm sorry, kid. We'll try the pendulum thingy in here and see if it does anything. May's a legend. Yes, she is. Oh, it's a doggo. Awesome. I got the star. Yahoo! Right, let's go. Oomph! Open door. See this I can appreciate. This I can appreciate. If any have played Resident Evil 3 Remake, Jill makes the most whitest bit of toast in the world. Like, it's not even toast, it's just bread, it's just dough. This is a better, it's not perfect, because, you know, they kind of must this whole side of it, but this is a better bit of toast. Oh, Misty. Why are you hating? Such a hater-gator. I'm hating because of the toast, but I'm saying I appreciate this toast, but Resident Evil 3's toast is subpar. Misty, how are you getting on? What is happening? Welcome on. Any that don't know my buddy Misty Rosie, she is probably the most energetic of all the beta whippers. She is not a fat cat, she's a beta whipper. And if you're not following her and checking her out on Twitch, you're doing yourself a disservice. Please go follow Misty. Misty, how are you getting on? I have been scaring the balls off myself with this game. It is good, but it is also of the scariest. Right. Painting named Sky Hunter, depicting a dog looking up and barking. Right, okay. So does that go there? That it's a dog's head, so I don't know why it's now become a bird, but it just has. What is this? What is this? What is it? I'm supposed to match the shadow? I don't think that's it. Put an unrelated object in the shadow plinth. Oh my god. Thank you very much, Achievements, for giving me grief. This is what's happening. All our new Misty, all the cool people are here tonight. This is amazing. Thank you folks for coming in. Dropped you a follower, Misty. May, you will enjoy Misty's energy. Misty is also from the Netherlands. She can be Netherlands friend. Chocolate! Nope. Shit. Oh! No, I shouldn't have reloaded it. Apparently that goes back in there. Can I stick something in the door? Nice to meet you. She is Stoofwaffel too? No, May is from the United States. But also very, very high energy. Stoofwaffel is great. Is great on a bit of coffee. Can I heat it up a wee bit? Nom nom. I don't know who this is. Who is this? Evelyn? Evelyn. Okay. Some good books. Some good books. The child does not want that cat. I'd have to take out the box as I cannot find it in the phone. Ah, right, okay, no worries, no worries. Oh, she is pretty. She can be my wife. Yes, that is also the other thing. Now, just advising everybody in chat, Misty will collect wives. So Flemish, if your wife Sierra comes on the chat, hide her, because Misty has collected all the wives, and they are hers now. Fuck it, you woman. Geraldine. Oh. That's not weird and creepy. Your wife, yep, 100%, 100%. She was stolen. Can I not wear this? Would this not be better protection? At this point, Missy, you need to find some kind of custom building for wife storage. She stores them in Pokeballs. They are like Pokemon. I don't like the windy noises. I don't like it. But that's open. I feel like something big is going to be chasing me around here. Can't open that. Who am I hearing? Gotta catch them all, 100%. If Misty doesn't catch all the wives, they'll be running rampant. No one will be able to stop them. I feel like I don't want to jump down there yet. I also feel like something isn't going to give me much of a choice. Ooh, this is nice. This is a nice bathroom. This is where I can poop. And I'm lifting coins from the bathroom, from the toilet now. That's hygienic. That can never go wrong. No risk in being hooked. No risk of being hooked. Chasing you then. No. Hook will never catch you. Hook will never catch you. You just distract them with some sort of pastry or iced cake, and that's I'm done. All geeks. It's in Geeks and Nerds. Awesome. I'll check it out later. Wooden statuette. I'm assuming this has something to do with the image downstairs. Can I combine them? Is that a thing? Do they combine? No. Well, where do you go, my friend? I'm assuming this, because it's kind of the birdie shadow shape, isn't it? Oh, fuck!
Heck of a thing, ain't it? Sure shit beats the hell out of dying.
Jack! I apologize for trying to kill you. Fuck!
This gift is with me always.
Run.
As you can see, the family is only part of her gift. Which, in a word...
Tell me what you want.
Oh, Sierra, why would you do this to me?
Oh, excuse me? No. What do you say? Bitch. No.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to give you a treat if you call me that.
So
what
you
do
did things in a good order there. You did everything you did today before activating Jack. I didn't know I was activating Jack. Just give it to her when you do. You can. Run from Jack. I have run from Jack. I'm hiding from Jack. But you know what? We're going to give Cleo her treats. Cleo! Here, camera. For some reason it was moved. Yeah, I think that's a better angle. Are you going to sit in front of the camera and be a good girl? She is. Look at her. Look at her eating her num-nums. Oh, a good girl. There's a good girl. She has her wee treats. Oh, look at her face. Look at her happy face. He only comes out when you get that item. A lot of people activate him before exploring and end up trying to figure out why he's following them. Well, I didn't know that. It was just run home, Jack. Home run, Jack. I didn't know that. How would I know this? Didn't. I know, that's what I mean, but I had no idea what I was doing. Does he know where I am? Or does he follow sound? Nifty. What's happening? Evening. Bangarang. Who doesn't love that tech film? I want to do this puzzle, but I don't know where he is. And my footsteps are really loud. They're really fucking loud. Anybody not following Nifty as well, please give me a wee follow. Last playing Counter-Strike. I think that's about right, doesn't it? Come on, I can't get much better than that. There we go. That's how light works. I still can't believe this is your first playthrough. Oh no, it 100% does. I haven't played this one before. Time freezes on them puzzles. Oh, does it? Because I was reading something earlier and he attacked me. And Wild Paul, what's happening? How's things? Things are not great. Jack Baker has decided to follow me, attack me, set himself on fire, drive a car through me, and then murder me. Oh dear. You know how expensive this was? This was dear. Very dear. Like, is he going to be able to get me here? Does he know I'm here? I still can't believe it's not butter. That's because it isn't butter. And Hook will tell you that. Well, actually, Hook will tell you that. He'll lie and say it is butter, but it's not butter. Hey, how have you been? In City Street? Yeah, Wild Paw streams a lot of Resident Evil and stuff as well, but I haven't seen him be streaming a wee while, so you enjoying the summer? You enjoying the heat? Or is that the problem? Is it too warm? I didn't play the game. It's making me sick. You're a brave man. I've been in Norway? Norway. You've been there? Norway. Did you see that the Norwegian military have brought in this new process now, where on the sides of all their military ships, they have stuck barcodes, and it means whenever they come back in the port, it's easier to Scandinavian. Nice. It was a cruise. Oh, up in the fjords. Lovely. Lovely. Wow. What do you mean, wow? What do you mean, wow? Is there another re-switch in here? All right, that joke I'm saving for my husband. Do you want another one? Proper dad joke. Did you know that the theme song from Mortal Kombat is based on a religious song from Finland? To finish him. To finish him. He can't be here already. Looks like. Use psychostimulants to find items. Well, I already found that item, so what are you talking about, brother? Stab! Stab. No, it definitely is my first playthrough. See if you go on, if you're friends with me on Steam as well, you can actually see my achievements. I've only actually started getting them. Oh, it's a toilet. Is there more coins? No. What am I using the coins for, anyway? What's in there? That's a two-headed crow. That's weird. I'm also running out of space. Cam fluid, handgun, knife. You can't jam it open. Well, that sucks. That sucks. Oh, and I got James Bond First Light. First Light is a phenomenal game. Really had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, it's actually one of the few things me and Flamash agree on. It was a great James Bond adaptation of a game. I'm sure I'd love it. Coins have a purpose later, don't worry, but do pick them up, right? Okay. So if I go through here, I haven't gone into this room yet, wherever it is. I can't open these. Can I go onto the table? I can't. Looks like kids are it. Oh, that's about disturbing. Big Boss Robinson. I will allow that one. Flamash is a great take of the Terminator. You should talk to him about it. I have on several occasions. That's why the word Terminator is banned in my chat, because Flamash has fucked about and found out. The best James Bond game ever made. You know what? You're not really wrong. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it, and as a James Bond character and a story, it was great. It was a lot of fun. Yummy. I don't know what I'm supposed to use that for. Ooh, antique coin. Num num. Ooh, CRT TV. Started my Final Fantasy journey yesterday. Ooh, can't say I'm pleased with where I've started. It was Final Fantasy 14 you started? Most of the JR first person shooters. Yeah. And they just stuck the Bond name on a shooter. Can't hear or see the word fjords without thinking of Frozen, and now the song's in my head. Just let it go, Hook. Just let it go. Right, so this takes me to another location. Right, okay. Anybody not following my buddy the Hook? He is... Oh. Oh! He is an... Oh! The fuck is that? Oh, I didn't like that. Is it dead? It doesn't seem to have much collision left. It's dead. Right, okay. Okay, I'll let it go. Yay! Hook is a wonderful, wonderful human being. Puts on a brilliant stream. He chats a lot more than me, and sometimes it takes a couple of hours for him to get into a game, but, you know, don't let that hold you back. I have no healing stuff left. I must do. I had loads of healing items. Combine. Why can't I combine? Don't mean certain rooms I can do it, maybe? There. There we go. I'm talking about. Maybe you just need to let it go. See here, we've already told that joke. We've already told it. Here's Chelsea, though. Yeah, I've always been looking at them, thinking that looks like a wonderful trap. And also, Jack is bound to have heard me shooting. Don't like it. I don't like it. Shucks. You're bad. You're snot bad yourself. How dare you insult my mucus, sir? How dare you? My mucus is of the highest quality. I learned something new today. Hook plays games. Well, he sometimes plays games. Eventually he'll get them. The last half hour of his stream might be gameplay. Potentially. It's a podcast with some gameplay sprinkled in. I was in the back bedroom, so I didn't hear it. That's no excuse. Yeah. You monster. Also, the monster there is the molded corn. Stop spoiling things, Flamash. I need to find things out as I progress myself. Fucking spoiler bastard, hey. He loves to come on and just ruin a game for you, doesn't he? I do, potentially, sometimes. Allegedly, this is true. Capcom, you've done it again. Yeah. Still in place, highly recommend... 'Cause- 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 ' That's the other side of that door, which I can't open yet. Okay. Sierra, go and tell him to stop spoiling my game for me. Every time I play something he's played, he just has to come in and ruin it. Being all like, oh, this is happening, and this is the thing, and I'm like, no, don't tell me the thing. And he's like, I will tell you the thing. So he starts screaming at me, I'm Flim Flam Bam-a-Lam. I am the Pineapple King. And then he starts wiggling about. Well, my stuff's playing games. See, Sierra knows. I need a lockpick for that. I love the fact that they have some safer music back here as well. Well, it isn't actually explained. See, they explained it here. See? I might put these coins away because I don't know when I'm going to need them. Well, I told you to read them. I believe I did tell him to shut up at that point. Yeah, this is true. The problem is he can't hold his water. He cannot. He definitely cannot. He cannot hold the secret at all. This is why I don't tell him secrets. Flamash definitely didn't tell me the first letter clue thing in Dead Space. Oh, I believe you. I believe you. But luckily Sierra said no before he did it. So there's a pattern. There is a massive pattern. Do you need something spread about you, Flamash? What we need to do is I need to set up a thing in Streamerbot that every time Flamash said something, it puts it in some sort of quarantine so a mod can read it first. And then they can decide to send it in the chat or not, but I don't think I can. He does a good gossip too. And shit. That shit that getting the gossip. Oh yeah, yeah. A thing happened, and this happened to this person. It was hilarious. And Sarah will be all like, oh, what was the story about it? I don't know. I might test this sometime. Yeah. It's a good idea. Good idea. I do like the fact that there's hold music again. And not hold music, safer music. What did I get in here? I still have this dog thing, this dog head. I have to go down these stairs. This will be fun. I'm sure none of Flamash's molded are going to be down here. I read the blink of the eye with no problem. I'm just teasing you. Some crack at man, isn't he? You come in and go, these people we know are broken up, and go, oh, what? What happened? And he goes, in. Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is a squelchy room. From my time in Silent Hill, I know the squelch well. First rule gossip, get every ghoulish detail. I know, and be like, just be a good listener. Flamash isn't a good listener, that's a problem. I could come in and go, these people. Ah, yeah, we're there. Oh, sir. Oh no! Oh, they're inappropriate huggers. How dare you, sir? How dare you? Sir, could you die? Whew. Exactly. The audacity, I know. Just ask questions, then got the gossip. Yeah, yeah. Or bring a notepad. Bring a notepad. Take notes. Oh, that's new. Okay. He's dead. Right. Okay. Got. Take notes. Sounds like work. It is work. You're doing it for the gossip. Or you're doing it for the biz. Caught a guy in here trying to escape. Locked him up again. Right. So that's probably that guy I've just killed. Oh, a morgue. What could go wrong here? I'm sure there's no squelchy things going to jump out at me. Tomorrow? Well, if it's not today, it's definitely tomorrow. John? What is that noise? I can hear something fucking moving. That one's locked, right? Okay. That seemed very unnecessary, for whatever reason it was there. Happy spice, happy house. Yes, it's true. That is true. Or happy flim flam, happy bim lam. That also makes sense. Blocked from the other side. Son of a bitch. Right. Oh no, I haven't gone this way. Right, okay. I thought it'd take me back to the start. Well, this is lovely. Looked like something was going to come out of it. Right, okay, okay. But Flim Flam is never happy, this is true. He's not a happy bunny. Okay, he's dead. Oh! Where'd you come out of, sir? Did they drop anything? There's no items or anything to get off them now. Why is the room so squelchy? Eddie charged him with his flag and sword. I think this is the trooper. It is. Sammy Dabby, do you? Welcome on. This is because Flim Flam has never heard the joy of the Tim Tams. Well, we do have penguins, which are penguins or Tim Tam adjacent, but not, apparently not as nice. Yes, it is. Oh Lord, I'm a paladin. You are a paladin. Anybody not following Sammy, he's a wonderful man, wonderful streamer, really, really pleasant fellow. However, he decides to stream in the wee hours, so we can't catch his streams, which makes me sad. If you could die, that would be great. Really, as soon as I... Son of a bitch! The Orc the Marksman, no wall is safe in his presence. Fucking Flamash, fucking swanning in here acting a big man. What am I going to do with him? What am I going to do with him? Oh no, he didn't write anything bad. I just checked and there's nothing bad there at all. Oh, that's happy days. That's grand. Happy days. Probably a follow Sammy. May you'll like Sam. He's a lovely fella. Stream when I'm awake, please. I know. God damn it! Why delete that? Why delete that one? Well, because I want to. Because I want to. Because I'm a man. I'm a human man. Flim flam. Move the ground this way again. Hey, thank you very much for the 10 butts. Hear our lovely PS3 login music. Because it was rude. It was. It made me feel sad. It made me feel sadness. Missed me. I don't know how much damage blocking really saves me. You don't have feelings. I do have feelings, and you hurt them. That's fair. My problem is there's too much chocolate. That's a good problem to have. I need to check when my next day off is during the week so I can stream to the Northern Irish. Your fan base, that's what that's called. That's your peoples. Well, on the other side, right, okay. Here's where I went on that last time, and it was just all bullshit. I don't know where your man came from. There was a fella just appeared out of nowhere there. There was this boy who came through here. Oh fuck, he's right there. Right, okay. He's dead. Got him. But blocking saves a lot of damage. Will never block the emotional abuse from the message deleted. Ah well. I'll get over it. I'll be fine. It's good. think it's too late for you. Isn't it a good thing, though? I saw you were starting to sell gluten-free Tim Tam in my local store. They look just like the regular one, but 50% the original size. Are they nice, though? Are they tasty? Do you do the same thing we do with the penguins, where you bite off the corners and you drink your coffee or tea through it? Sammy is from America as well. Sir, I don't appreciate this attitude up here. That took a lot of bolts. I hate penguins. Too much chocolate flavored coating. I love penguins. I think they're delish. Generator room. This is a sizable house. He just spawned out of nowhere. He wasn't even there. I call shenanigans. Oh fuck, there's two. Shit, there's two of them. Fucking hell. Everybody's fingers do that. Bite off both ends and drink your coffee through them. It's like a... That's a big straw. Oh, like a straw. I haven't tried it. One streamer friend did a 6 hour... They have some 6 hours away from me, though, those. Oh, very nice. I'm struggling a wee bit. You talking about Texas? Apparently, you're supposed to bite off the opposite corners like a straw. Yeah. And then drink it, and then it makes it all chocolatey and delish. And also penguins have dad jokes in them, which I like. There we go. I know I'm in the minority and I can't stand them. But it's okay to be wrong. It's fine. No, I'm sorry, sir, but you peeked through the collision. That's some bullshit right there. Also, is there a better place I should be shooting them apart from the head? I don't know. I don't think there was much in here apart from whatever that is. This is, after all, a very silly room. This is a silly place. Texas might be held 100,000 people. I haven't left my rock in years. Shoot them in the knees and knife them. I don't think they have knees. I think they're just a collection of slime. Double chocolate's plenty of sugar already. Am I being silly going through there? Right, is this just taking me to a new area? Right. Just loops around. Just loop theory! Just loop theory, I've unlocked it! Loop theory. We figured it out, folks. I think no matter what, I have to go down there. Oh, map. Oh, this place is sizable. Right, so I was in the morgue previously. Oh, lockpick. Right, okay. Scorpion key. I don't like that. I don't like that. Is it penguins you hit, or just all flightless birds? Ostriches too. They're dickheads. Those enemies, they're like a 30. Look like they're in their 30s to 50s. Just ask them about the house. The ask right there, and they should all freeze and try the process and leave the house. Like you leave that. Oh, I'm struggling. Those enemies look like they're in their 30s or their 50s. Just ask them to go out of the house after 8 p.m. and they should freeze in place trying the process why you should leave the house after. This is true. This is true. We shouldn't leave the house that late. Why would you want me to leave the house that late? That's weird. I need to rest. I think this just takes me down the other side of that kind of circle. You know what, we'll just go for the biscuit. We'll try it. Damn, I apologize. I wasn't wearing my glasses, and I kind of struggled a wee bit with that. Not gonna lie. I can't open this. Right, okay. It's okay. I'm also not wearing my glasses. Why are we not wearing our glasses? Why have we decided to do this? Why do we think we look cool without our glasses? Hey, Flemish? Flemish is the worst word. He does it all the time during stream. Can I parry him? Can I parry him like in Kazan? Parry with your face, Leo. You were born for this. I was. That's Misty's nickname for me. Leo, parry with your face. And it's funny because it's the exact same text that she writes each time, but sometimes it's very affectionate. Sometimes it's very supportive. Sometimes it's a little bit threatening. There was one time I made a joke and she just wrote Leo, parry with your face. And I was like, oh my God, I can feel the intensity and the threat of that one. I hate wearing glasses. They just get in the way. I don't mind wearing them, but they're not very tight, and I'm constantly trying to fix them on my face, and then sometimes I'm not wearing them, and I'll just poke myself in the eye. Parry it! I'm blind even when I wear mine. I'm blind without mine. I'm short-sighted. I don't really need them for everything. But it might help me with chat, maybe. I need someone with a Mael emote. Ooh. But an Expedition 33 right there. So both of them spawn at the same time. There we go. Mine, varifocals to do your job. Ah, right, okay, very cool. Are they the ones that change depending on the sunlight? Sure. Is this one a little bit stronger? He tends to take a bit more bullets to go down. Oh. And if I didn't say it before, thank you again, folks, for coming on tonight. I really appreciate you. You're all the bestest of folks. Ah, there's two. I keep forgetting that. Oh, I'm running low on ammo. Come on. I have no ammo. Can I stab him? Oh, they disappeared. Shit. Right, okay. Can I create ammo? I can create ammo. It's fine, folks. It's fine. No, let's react like mine or distance reading. Oh, right, okay. Very good. There we go. There we go. We're sucking diesel now, so we are. Oh, there's another one. Are they the same lads from before? Did they retain the same damage? I wonder. I'm stuck in the door, sir. Sir, stop it. Stop it. Stab! I don't think that was anything. Right, okay. Me need new strategy. So that's the key I need for that door. But that just fucking takes me back to Jack, which I don't like. So I'm going to go down and finish down here then. The knife does nothing. What do I see if I can... I know they keep eating me. It's inappropriate because I don't taste very good. Tastes like a middle-aged bald man. Sir! That was rude. It's Hawk eating a taco, silly. What? What? What is this? Nom 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 nom. I don't know why I keep opening this. There's nothing up. What is Hawk? I can see the taco. I can. I'm looking at. I'm looking at. I'm looking at. I'm looking at. Ah, right. Okay, I see it now. See it now. Because it's tiny. It's a little ghost. Little big ghost. Right. Maybe go in here first because I get the stuff and then go through there. Because I get handgun bolts and I get a map. Get to unlock this. Time to finish gherkins with chili. Ooh. I'm intrigued. I like it. I like it. There's a lockpick I got. Can't be fooled by the lockpicks I got. I don't have enough space. I dare you, sir. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have space now, don't we? No chili? Why no chili? Por favor. There we go. I'm going to go down this other way. Risk it for the biscuit. Let's chance it. Oh, I couldn't go down this other way. Shotgun shells? I don't need them yet. Right, have to go the other way, don't I? Fuck. No, we can't have spice. We're a delicate burger. I know you are, but it's fine. It'll be grand. We'll just eat it whilst on the toilet. Guy jumps down here. I do have a full jar that's non-chilies. Well, that could work. He decided to do that. Okay. Fucker. I feel like I have a bit more ammo now. Still not great, though. Fucker. He is definitely a little bit stronger. He's a little bit stronger than the other ones. And this guy just appears out of nowhere. On with his buddy Steve. Steve. They didn't kill them, which kind of irks me a wee bit. Because they're going to respawn with full health again, aren't they? Okay. Okay! And we're dead. Right. That's the room that's causing me the issues. Right there. Hello, worm. Welcome on. Thank you very much. Well, now. Well, now indeed. Chickenito is dead. 100%. Those two that spawn there tend to be giving me the most grief. They take a wild lot of bullets, and I don't know whether they are special in any way, if there's something about them. The rest of them take about 3, and that's them. Hello, hope you're enjoying the Moldy Boys so far. The Moldy Boys I'm not enjoying. Does it do more damage when you hit them from close range? I don't think it does. I think it's Mia. Mia's the problem. Because she's jealous of Ada. Jamie, what's happening? How's the lads? How's she cutting, sir? All the problems you have in this game and in Village are because you decided that saving her and getting answers are the right thing to do. I haven't played Village yet, and haven't played this one either. Okay, good, because I get names confused with spouses in games and cause more problems. Ada Wong is a standard, though, I get it. Oh, May doesn't like Ada. May will fight you for Ada. Yeah, I don't think the distance matters. They just... Can they... Like gunpowder to make more bullets. I don't think the distance really matters with them. They just kind of... Are bullet sponges. For DLC episode, though, oh my goodness. Oh, in Resident Evil 4? Yes. I love Ada. Maya is wrong. I do like an RE4 remake, though, but I still hate her. Me and May are going to start playing Dead by Daylight, and I am going to play as Ada, because Ada's better than Jill. That's right, he said it! He said it! He said it. Scorpion key, lockpick, that, and whatever this is, treasure photo. As long as she's not better than Claire, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Every time I paid attention to the villages because they're such a good watch, and also in 4 when Ashley had screen time. Ashley annoyed me. She really annoyed me. Just like, Leon! Sir. Whenever Ashley answers her, my energy was devoted to shitting on her. Alright, okay. Ashley is annoying. She's worse than the original, though. She's not as bad in the OG. Right here. We're here for this bullshit now. Right, okay. Where's the screen? Oh, there it is. Sir, let me heal, would you? No, I'm dying, I'm dead. Gotcha, I'm a fan of RE. And Silent Hill OGs, yes, May is. You're going to be playing the OG Resident Evil Veronica soon as well. Remakes are decent. I like the remakes. I love the remake of 2. Although I love the OG of 2 as well. Wellies, Ada, wellies. My Leon never catches me either. As long as this game looks so hard, I think it's maybe just I'm really bad at it, Mickens. I think it's a skill thing from my point of view. real issue. I wish we could just leave her and whatever she gets herself into. Yes, or maybe she could listen every now and again. Maybe stop running into danger when we tell her no. Very nice. I'm a watcher of Ari and Silent Hill at nighttime. Makes no sense to me for some reason. I really recently played through Silent Hill 2, the remake, and oh, it was such a good game. The audio work in that game was, oh, chef's kiss. It was top tier. I'm becoming an expert on this area. Seems to be, I'm getting to know it very well. Getting to know you. See, 3 shots to the head will take these ones down, but that's when you get in. When you get into that room, there's them next to, which seem to be just absolute sponges for bullets. I played this, sir. I think they're easier to shoot and stagger and run past. See, I don't know what's after them, so I kind of don't want to. You know what I mean? Why did that guy not spawn? Bit disconcerting. Is it because I didn't go over here as soon as you hit that point he spawns, right? Okay. Right, okay. That's him down. Those are what I call my blankets, I suppose. Cozy games. You do enjoy the horror. Right, so. I'm not well loaded when it comes to ammo, though. Can I just run past him? We will try. No! Move! Sir! I'm surrounded. Nope. It was not a good plan. Why I can't use it here? Fuck off! I need a grenade. Yep. Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. They all disappear as soon as I leave, but that does me no good because I still can't fight them. I'm waiting on the Hellraiser revival that drops in. Right, okay. So I don't know what I was supposed to do in that room. I kind of rushed past him for the door, but the door was locked. So there's something in here that has to happen. I got 4 bullets. If you can all line up, that would be wonderful. Just let him kill me. I might have to try and bait them out of the room. Do it that way. Try and retain as much ammo as possible. My cozy games are like a billion hours to complete, you know, like Persona 4 going, oh, I love a bit of Persona. Love a bit of Persona. Why? He's so slow. Okay. These motherfuckers drop nothing. They drop nothing. That. Turn around. Gonna go in here. Grab up the stuff that's in this room. A lot can be just dodged easily. They despawn and they don't reappear later in the game. No, well, those ones, they despawn and they reappear again in that room. Does me no good. Paint roller. Paint roller. Fuck! Jesus Christ. No Skyrim, Minecraft, no Chick-fil-A sauce. I know. Never gets old. It does get a little bit old. A little bit. A little bit. I mean, turn around again. I know. It gets you. Never gets old. Unlike Leyoric. Limosh. Oh, you've made me sad. You've made me sad. I don't understand the appeal of Skyrim. I don't care for Minecraft. I love Dragon Builders. Chick-fil-A sauce is also good. He's going to delete that message, isn't he? No, I'm going to put it up there. Let your shame live with you, Flim Flam Banwa. How you hurt your friend's feelings. Let it live with you. I have no shame. That is part of the issue. If I go here, this guy spawns, but the other guy doesn't spawn yet until I cross that point. You check out Dragon... Yes! May I have Dragon Quest Builders too? We should play that. Very good game. It's a lie. I gave you a hard time. So I do consider you a friend. No, you hate me. You clearly hate me. Alright, Flemish, I'm used to the hate. The hate? Is it on Steam or Epic? Steam, I think I have it on. See, that took about 9 shots, I think. Sorry, I've been watching football and judging your facial expression. Are you a bit stressed? Oh, a little bit. I keep dying in here. Actually, are they explosive? No, they're not. Fuck. So if I go here, they despawn. But if I go back in, they respawn. Noted. I was wondering, yeah, unfortunately not. See? Respawny bastards. Fuck, he's chasing me! Run! I concentrate on one at a time. Is it the light that's hurting him? Oh, he's still coming. No, he's not. Cheeks are in fact clenched. I know. Well, it can block with its arm. I know, it's annoying, isn't it? Jesus, I wonder what that was. Moji! What's happening? Father! I can hear it. I can fucking hear it. Moji, what is happening? Welcome on. Moji is our friend who lives in Japan. Fucker. Oh, I hate these bastards. Why do these ones have so much health? Why do the ones in that room have so much health? Am I just too weak for this area? Am I supposed to just avoid it? Just got for work. There is football. I haven't watched a single game because of time difference. I worry I'll be bad luck. If it's for England, you watch away. You can be their bad luck. I don't mind. Anybody not follow Moji? Please give Moji a follow. She is a wonderful VTuber and very, very entertaining. Playing through a lot of Final Fantasy 14 at the moment. But big fan of the Metal Gear Solids and stuff as well. I'm thinking maybe I have to come back with a shotgun or something for the boys. That wee room, I'm leaving. I'm not even going back yet. Fuck it. Fuck that room. Fuck that room. The bastard. Go down here. We're going to get the key. And we're just going to keep going. Or is there something I definitely need in that room? Am I going to have to go back anyway? What was that treasured photo about? Like, it's a physical item. Why is this a thing? I hid something here, but try to find it if you can. Right, okay. Okay, that's fine. Lockpick and hair. Right, okay. Don't know who hair is, but we find him. We find him. I'm dead. So if I just leave and go open the scorpion door, like what is it? Get 3 dogs' heads, open the yard, get the shotgun. Right. I don't know where I'm getting dog heads from. Oh, I wasn't here yet, was I? Well, I was. Oh, right, sir. Sir. Control yourself. There we go. Norway fans, Norway! What could I use the lockpick for? Was there anything locked in here, actually? There was something, wasn't there? Oh, just, was that this was locked? I don't know why he whipped out the gun. I need a gun to unlock this. Can't play it. Right, okay. Maybe not the most useful thing in the world, but I'm going to do a new save data just in case I fucking wreck myself. Right, I can go back into the house anyway, can't I? Gunpowder, first aid med, psychostimulants. I haven't used them yet. So take me back into the house. Supplies I couldn't get into. Oh no, wrong way. This way. Right, so we're back here. Laundry room is a save room. Couldn't open this door yet, could we? No, we have to get the dog heads. And I do have one of them. Just need the other 2. Dog heads. Dog heads. Dog heads. Is it going to make me go down that incinerator? I need that shotgun. That's what I need. Me needest the shotgun. Is Jack going to be wandering about as well? Is that going to be a constant issue? Probably. Probably. Right, back to the original part of the house now. Oh, is that Mr. Fucking sounds like Mr. X. Can't get me in here. Whew. Right, okay. Okay. Just in case. Can we look down here? Because I didn't have my knife, I don't think, last time I came down here, so there was... Oh, what's this? Can I get that? Can I get it? Is it mine? Mine. Apparently no. There is something in behind there, but I don't know how to get it. Right, okay. Okie dokie. This takes me up to the pantry. Main hall I cannot get out of. This whole area I can't do anything with. Right, okay. Ethan, get out of the fucking hole, would you?
Howdy.
Fuck!
Boom!
Fucker! Oh, I do not like him. I do not like him. The socks do nothing. Right, need to plan out my route. Need to plan out my route. Right, okay. What have we got? What have we got? Shall not be fooled by the rocks that I have. Oh, there's rooms upstairs. Right, so I haven't visited them, really. There's a recreation room, grandma's room, kids' room. Right, so I need to go up there and do them. Because I just went through the main one before. What is that? What is a key icon? I got that one. I got that one. What? What one? What? What do we get? What do we get? All right, I'm just chatting from the block. Right, okay. I'm sitting there going, what did I say? I'm in the laundry room. Wait. I need to go back to the main house. And then up. Right, okay. I can do this. I can do this. Okay, I'm still empty. Why is it still? I know. England are shite. The kids as articulate as ever.
Ethan! Ethan! Ethan!
Go down the hole. Wait for him to leave. Fuck! This is scary. Well, no. He's at the Norway. So, Moji, what time is it for you now, then? Middle of the night? Yes, Norway. Ah, right, okay. So, by the way it's progressing at the moment, it is not coming home, then. That's the only way out into the main house. So if he guards that door, I'm kind of fucked. Shouldn't have came on here. 6:44. It's not too bad. It's not like not ridiculous times, but yeah, it's pretty early. But no way was Norway's goal supposed to be shot, or Devs was trying to come to cross it. Right? Okay. Don't know where he is, but he's gone from there now at least. What?
I see you.
I know you see me. Leave me be. Do not like Jack Baker. Does he not follow me in here? Does he? Does he not? I don't know. He knows where I am. Don't know how we have a bit of power, but I think shot will probably not mean it to hit bins. I need to get upstairs now past Jack. Up there's kind of where I need to go. I have enough health, I could probably make a run for it. How the fuck do you speedrun this shit? And should I be sneaking or just walking? Is walking fine? As long as I don't run. He's going where I'm going. He knows where I'm going. Will he walk back down the stairs if I sit here? Fuck. Audio in this is great. It's terrifying, but it's great. I actually hear where his steps are going to. It's so cool. Really? I mean, if he did shoot it, it's some goal height. Depending on what way he's gone.
It won't be long before I find you and kill you.
I'm hoping he opens the door and just keeps walking, and I can hide here for a wee bit. Also, what are you trying to kill me for? I'm a member of the family. I would. Peach. Oh, you should be being sweet to each other, calling each other Peach. As long as he's not calling them down for more dinner. Oh, the dinner didn't look great. Didn't look great. They should have just ordered in a pizza. Is this what the AI is doing? It knows where I'm supposed to go, so it's having him patrol that area. I'd love to watch one of them videos. I've seen one for Mr. Expert, showed you what his AI does when you don't see him.
Come out, wherever you are. Don't move.
What? Jack! Fuck off!
I can smell you. Stay right there.
Can I just loop him around here forever? Jack, me and you are just going to loop around here forever, kid, while I go around and love stuff. Sound good? I have a tape. I have a tape to watch.
I'm on to you.
Are you really? He is! He's got me! No! Cassie, magic. Well, come on. What's the crack? Thank you for signing on. Levels above everybody. Fuck! No! Don't touch me. Where is he? Look at. I wonder if we'll ever see him in the pram. Are we talking about Jack Baker? Or are you talking about the foosballs? Ah. But Cassie, welcome on. What is happening? Do I have any items on here? Maybe I left one of it. No, just antique coins. What can I do with them? Treasure photo. Oh, I didn't even search for that. Where was that again? The main hall, I think. City will be the only destination. There was somewhere... Was it the monitoring room? I can't use that there, apparently. There's something supposed to be in there. Can I shake it? Nope. 2 jeepers. 2 jeepers. Exactly, 2 jeepers. Apparently there's a treasure here somewhere. Oh! Steroids. Okie dokie. That's a thing. Dramatically strengthens muscles, increases max health. Effects last indefinitely. Yes. Can I take that? There we go. How are you ahead in the game? Offside in America. What? Right, so we now have steroids. Hopefully that helps with Jack Baker a wee bit. I'm assuming that's some sort of upgrade path. We save that shit. Right, so I know where I need to go. Have that. Oh, maybe the area downstairs will last a bit longer now with the steroids. I'll have higher health. I don't have a great amount of bullets, so that's the only thing. Do I go down and explore there, or do I go upstairs and keep going? So I have to deal with them mold things, or deal with Jack Baker. Those are my choices. Yeah, definitely would cost like 3 million to get. Oh, for fuck's sake. Right, okay. I think it's actually a good point to end up there. So it means I have a couple of locations to go with next Thursday whenever I come back to this game. So what's going to happen is we're not going to do Tuesday for Resident Evil 6. It's going to be on Wednesday. Me and Hook are going to play that, and then I'm going to come back to Resident Evil 7 on Thursday and Saturday. Whee! Over here. But thank you so much, folks, for coming on. Thank you so much for the raids as well, and all the gifted subs. Absolutely fucking brilliant. It's a bit gritty, isn't it? It is a little bit gritty. It's a little bit gritty, and it's a little bit gross, but it's wonderful at the same time. I am going to see which amazing people are online that we can raid now at the moment as well.
Oh,
thanks
hello,
for the stream.
Papa.
No problem.
I was just about to want
It's
to
silly cows.
I do not like it. You have made me to look
They
like
have
a
hidden
silly
me.
cows, and I am not a silly cows. I am a strong and agile German shepherd. Kinda Dumaku.
Oh, no, Dumaku. So we are going to see about finding.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
I'm sure it was. But we're going to find a cool person to raid now at the moment and keep this party going. So let me see who we have online that we can raid. So we've Duchess, we have Wahin, we have Harax, we have Mud, Easily. Oh, loads of good people. Actually, I don't think I've raided Duchess in quite some time, so I might raid Duchess. So Duchess Cats, you probably know her from different chats, but she is a cat VTuber, but she's also really funny and really sound. So if you could do me a massive favor and say hello, dear, it would be much appreciated. I am going to put up the raid message. Now, I'm pretty sure you should beat the boss, but I'm not too sure how well it's going to work. So I have to fix all that OneDrive stuff. Pop that up now. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, no, he wasn't defeated. He's a strong old fucker, he is. So the top message is for followers, bottom message is for subscribers. These have been absolutely brilliant. These have made my night tonight. Thank you so much, folks. And I will catch all of yous on Wednesday when me and Hook get back into Resident Evil 6. Or no, yeah, Resident Evil 6. Fixed. And I'll see you then. Thank you again, folks.
Thank you.